Good evening, dears. Let's get comfortable for this long listening. Let me turn the music down just a little. All right, so we are back to our listening party of the Magnus Archives. We have a lot to get through, as there are 200 of these beautifully horrific episodes. So we've made a playlist that you can find, and you can come back and listen through them at any time. The description box will have where we are in our reading, so feel free to check that out and catch up with where we are. I'm trying to figure out where I want our text boxed out. I see I still need to make some adjustments. Hold on. All right. As we were, we will be continuing at episode 31 of the Magnus Archives. Please feel free to fall asleep. That is your dream siren's highest honor, to have you here with me, resting with me, tuning out all of the buzz of the world. And tonight, for my snack, because I always have a nice snack when we listen to these, I have some Ghirardelli mini chocolates, water, of course, and ginger tea, which I will probably get a refill of as soon as this is gone, because I'm obsessed with this tea right now. That and barley tea, those two things are my favorite things right now. So, also sorry about the flood of messages. That was not supposed to do that. We are still figuring out so many of the features that we've been trying to figure out how and when we want to activate them, and for whatever reason that set off literally everything. I was like, oh, okay. Surely that's not how that's supposed to be. But maybe, because I think the one message, a whisperer drifts through the dream. That message is to greet people when they arrive into our broadcast. So welcome. Welcome in. Please make yourself comfortable. We will be listening for quite a bit tonight. I think last time we listened to almost 20 episodes. So I really would like to get through this. If we listen every... If we listen every Friday... Oh, it will take us quite some time. We're gonna try to listen as much as we can. And if I fall asleep, please join me. But I've listened through the series several times, and I would like to have something to go back and listen to together. So Yeah. Hello, dear. How are you tonight? So, if you've never been with us before, when we listen to the Magnus Archive, I will play the audio so that you can hear it, and we listen along together. Oh, hello, dear. How are you today? I'm so glad that you've returned. We're going to be listening to a horror podcast tonight. One of the things that I love, which probably seems a bit odd, is that I'm a dream siren. I love things that are scary. I love scary games. I love scary movies. I love scary stories. And the Magnus Archive is this amazing horror podcast that was created by the Rusty Quill. So I apologize in advance if you don't like things that are scary. So I will send you a big comforting hug right now before we start. I know that not all of my dreamers like scary things, so I always want to make sure to give comfort before we begin. Or if someone pops in that I know they don't like something scary, I'll stop for a moment and say, hey, this probably is not going to be for you. Just so that they don't listen to something that might scare them. But if you do enjoy scary things, then please make yourself very comfortable so that you can listen with me. We'll be here for several hours tonight, and if you can fall asleep to a really great story, I encourage you to fall asleep with me, as I might fall asleep too. So let's lower our background music a little bit, and I will actually send the playlist that we're listening to. And if you want to listen on your own to catch up, please be my guest. Oh no. That's okay. I'm glad that you told me though, because I don't want you to listen to anything that's gonna make you scared. It's also kind of difficult to explain because this is different. It's not how would I say? It goes through the different types of fears that we have. So, in a sense, it's not like one type of like scary thing. It's like one example is the fear of big open spaces. And the writers of the show do a very beautiful job of describing like the fear of heights, and there is a god, if you would say, who is the god of that particular fear. So when we're listening to the story, it's kind of talking about these different gods that control these different primordial fears. And it's written that way. It's very beautifully done, but I don't want you to be scared. That is not that is not good. So I'm trying to think, because I can't. I was gonna say maybe I could mute the audio on one side of things, but I don't think that I can. I don't have a proper router where you wouldn't have to listen. But I'm especially bad with... Oh wait, hold on. It went by really fast. But I'm especially bad with scary videos. Oh no, it's no video. It's just gonna be a story. I'm okay with scary things to an extent. Okay, dear. Well, if it starts to sound really scary, mute it. And I'll still be here with you. You can come in the pillow fort with me still. And you can see the closed captioning. So that way you can still kind of like hear me if I say something. And I'll reply to your comments as well. So we will do our best. Yes. But I hope that you're doing well today. And I hope that the sun warmed your face. It's been raining everywhere. So I took a little nap today before the rain came in again. There's been thunderstorms every single day, which I love because it's good for naps. But also, I posted a 30-minute napping video today. So if you want someone to take a nap with now, there's a video there of me sleeping. And we have an 8-hour sleeping video that not everybody probably can listen to. But I think the 30-minute one is really nice. Even if you just put it on for some pretty music. Yay! It's a beautiful sunny day here, and I slept very well last night thanks to your voice. That makes me happy. I'm glad you slept well, dear. It is very good. I'm having a honey ginger tea, and the ginger is very strong. All right. Well, let us get ready to begin. Again, if it sounds too scary, please feel free to just mute the stream. And I stop between every episode. They're anywhere between 15 to 25 minutes. So we take a break between each of the episodes to kind of digest what we just heard. And I don't think my closed caption will capture the audio to translate it, so I apologize. Alright, let's lower our background music. That music is very peaceful. And we've got our timer. Our timer has a 5-second countdown, and then it will start. And hopefully I don't forget it, as I tend to do. Alright. Alright, that is the audio. So that's the beginning of every episode, so you'll kind of get used to it to know, like, oh, it's starting. So we're going to pick back up with chapter 31, or I'm sorry, episode 31 of the Magnus Archives. This chapter is called The First Hunt. We've got to dip into our accent to really bring out the spice in the show. Alright. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Rusty Quill presents The Magnus Archives. Episode 31, First Hunt.
My chocolate.
Statement of Lawrence Mortimer regarding his hunting trip to Blue Ridge, Virginia. Original statement given December 9th, 2010.
This is
Audio
a good
recording
one
by
to start
Jonathan
on.
Sims,
It's not
head
so
archivist of the
scary.
Magnus Institute, London. Statement begins. I always wanted to go hunting. It always seemed such a manly sort of pursuit. I mean, killing the deer or elk or whatever else was always beside the point. It was just the idea of setting off into the wild, surviving out there, cooking and eating what you kill. It all sounded like such an adventure. I mean, I'd thought about trying it in this country, but shooting pheasants with shotguns and riding down foxes all seemed too much the domain of nitwits in tweed. So if I was going to go hunting, I would need to go to another country to do it. Somewhere where they had a few animals worth going after. Thinking about it, I suppose that is what happened in the end, in a perverse sort of way. And it did cost poor Arden his life. Well, my desire to go hunting was always something of a someday project. I'm sure you know what I mean. Those ideas you have, holidays you plan to do sometime in the future, but they're never time dependent, and usually you just keep putting them off for more pressing things. So when I turned 50 back in February, I thought, dash it all, I'm going to go hunting before I drop dead. When I told my friends, they all thought I'd gone loopy, but I just reminded them that it isn't just the young that can be impetuous and daft. Anyway, over the past few years, I'd become great friends with an American. Arden Neely was his name. We'd met on a skeptics message board and got on like a house on fire. When I mentioned I was looking into impetuous hunting trips, he asked how averse I was to hiking. I said not at all, I've always been a very active sort, and he told me that in Virginia, his home state, there were a lot of excellent places to go hunting, providing I didn't mind waiting until October or November. Well, I wasn't exactly expecting the Grim Reaper to come knocking in the intervening months, so I told him it sounded lovely. We spent a good long while discussing it, and finally decided to take a 3-day hike into Blue Ridge on the Appalachian Trail, and see if we could find a deer or an elk for me to shoot. Nature, seclusion, and guns. To my ears, it sounded just perfect. So, early last month, I packed my bags and caught a plane over to Virginia. The weather was cold, but otherwise pleasant, and to be honest, I was surprised how similar it felt to Torquay in November. I normally live in Torquay. I think I put that on your form there. If I did, it won't hurt you to have it written down twice. I wasn't, however, fully prepared to meet Arden in person. I'd never met an internet friend in real life before, and he was far louder and more outgoing than I was prepared for, based on the well-thought-out and considerate communications we had previously exchanged. He kept laughing at everything I said, as though it was a joke, even when it wasn't a joke, and would not stop going on about my accent. Still, all was forgiven when he showed me his gun cabinet. They were beautiful. And while I'm a member of a few shooting clubs over here, you've always got to keep your rifles under lock and key, hidden away out of sight. To see a dozen well-cared-for weapons displayed proudly, well, it was just lovely. We set out the following day, driving up to Blue Ridge from his home in Richmond. It took some time to get there, as everything is so much further apart in America. But we parked at Crabtree Falls shortly after midday. We had our tents and our supplies. I was very excited to don my hunter's orange and to take up my rifle. I was carrying a Winchester M70, which I had read was very good for beginners, while Arden carried a Remington Model 673, his preferred firearm, which he talked about to me at great length. And off we went up the trail. Our first day was unsuccessful. I was something of a blundering presence, and though Arden was at pains to assure me that our failure was simply due to being too close to a road, I was sure that it was my own crashing footsteps scaring away the creatures. I mean, we hadn't gone far compared to our proposed route, but we were already several miles from the nearest road. As the day wore on, we began to look for somewhere to set up camp. We were attempting to leave no trace, as the Americans say, so we were likely going to set up our tents on the trail itself. But as we began to get them out, I heard the strangest thing. It sounded like somebody whistling, a slow version of The Farmer in the Dell, or, as I believe it's more commonly known, A Hunting We Shall Go. I looked over, and by the expression of puzzlement on Arden's face, it was clear he heard it as well. I was just about to call out to whoever...
If you're not familiar with that tune, it's A hunting we will go, a hunting we will go. Hi-ho, Derry-ho, a hunting we will go, I think.
...was whistling when a figure wandered very casually through the tree line and onto the trail. He walked out of thick woodland, as though he was strolling down a promenade. He was short and lean, with long shaggy black hair and a slightly unkempt goatee. His clothes were the rugged, durable sort you'd expect to see on a hiker, but he had no jacket or coat. He carried no backpack or kit of any sort. In fact, it seemed like he was just wandering through the woods with the clothes on his back. Arden was quicker to pick up on this than I was, and asked the man if he needed any help. The hiker stared at him for several long seconds, as though trying to deduce something, then smiled and said no. I didn't like that smile one bit. Far too many teeth to it, I'd say. He asked us where we were heading, how long we were on the trail for. There was something ever so slightly odd about his intonation, and he dragged the R's somehow when he spoke. We answered as vaguely as we could without being rude, since neither of us felt comfortable near this man. The hiker shrugged and started to walk across the trail between us, and as he did so, he paused for a second and took a deep breath. And it seemed for all the world like he was sniffing us. Then he said something, I forget exactly. Tomorrow will be a good day for a run, or something like that. And then he just started whistling again and wandered off into the forest behind us. I think both myself and Arden wanted to stop him. It was so clear something wasn't right with the situation, but we were both astounded with his manner, and I don't think either of us could have thought of how to do so. And then he was gone. I needn't tell you that sleep became difficult. The sounds of the forest at night were far louder than I had ever heard them back home, and every cracking branch, every rustle of leaves set my nerves on edge. It was an overcast night, and outside the tent was almost completely dark. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I could have sworn that I heard someone laugh, slow and softly, outside my tent. It sounded like it was right by my head, just the other side of the thin nylon wall. By the time I'd managed to get up the courage to check, of course, there was nobody there.
No.
The next day, we packed up the camp and set off hunting again, donning our lurid orange vests and rifles. I must admit I felt 10 times better with the weight of the gun in my arms, and was inclined to put the events of the night before behind me. In fact, after a morning spent walking and joking, and on 2 occasions damn near bagging an elk, I thought we were both having a splendid time. It was about 4 in the afternoon, the sun just starting to begin its descent towards an early autumn dusk, when I saw my elk. I don't know why, but when I saw him through the trees, I knew that he was mine. I told Arden, and we started to creep towards it very slowly. He had been teaching me since yesterday, and it wasn't long before I had my position and raised my gun. I sighted it just below the ear, and there was a moment when its head turned right towards me. I could have sworn it looked me in the eye as I prepared to pull the trigger. A gunshot rang out, but it was not from my gun. The elk startled and ran, and I spun around, but Arden was nowhere to be seen. The shot still echoed through the trees, but he seemed to have vanished. I began to search frantically.
I think that's true. We can be a little bit braver when we do things together.
For him. Had he been lured away by an elk of his own? Had he been accidentally shot by some other hunters? I called out his name, but there was no reply. Eventually, after several minutes of desperate searching, I came to a small clearing. There, slumped against one of the trees, was Arden. He was dead. The tree behind him was painted in a spray of crimson, and there was a messy hole in the center of his throat, as though it had been torn out entirely. His rifle lay next to him on the ground, also coated in blood. It seems silly to say now, but my first thought was to check his pulse. So I put my gun down to do so. Obviously he didn't have one, but I couldn't understand what was happening. I'd been with him not 3 minutes before, and he had been alive and unharmed. It didn't make sense. Then I heard that whistling. That infernal whistling from the tree line. I turned, and there was the hiker. His right hand was coated in Arden's blood, and he grinned at me. Then he began to sprint. His speed was incredible, and he loped from side to side with a sort of zigzag motion. I ran. I know I should have picked up my gun, but you can't understand just how frightening it is to have something like that, a true predator, running at you, full pelt, your death charging towards you like a freight train. You can't understand what it is to be prey. So I ran. I turned tail, leaving my pack and my gun behind, and sprinted into the woods. I didn't look back. I couldn't. It took all my concentration to keep my footing, to not trip. I could hear him occasionally behind me as he charged through a bush or scratched against a tree. I think he did it deliberately, you know, to let me know he was still there. There's no way I could have won that foot race, but I think he must have been toying with me. After a while I could no longer hear him directly behind me, so I slowed to catch my breath. I'm in good shape, as I say, but I'm not a young man. I was dizzy with the exhaustion. I sat there, so intent on listening out for any sign of danger of this man, that I barely even noticed night fall. There were no clouds that night. and I was glad, since I had left my torch along with my pack. If I was to run at all during the night, I would need the moonlight to see by. Of course, any experienced hiker will tell you never to travel the woods at night, and certainly not to run through them. But I hardly had any choice if it came to it. And of course it did. The night was barely half an hour old when I heard it again. That whistling. Then the words floating through the trees, but with a low bass tone to them. A-hunting we shall go, a-hunting we shall go. And once again I ran. By all rights I should have broken my neck, charging off into the darkness like that. I should have tripped on a root or put my foot in a rabbit hole. I should have at least twisted my ankle. Somehow this didn't happen, though. I ran and ran and, well, I just kept running. It didn't seem to do me any good, of course. I was still far slower in the dark than I had been during the day, and it was obvious my pursuer could easily outpace me if he wanted to. So many times I'd heard that song coming from in front of me and turned sharply to avoid it, until I was utterly lost. Finally, I broke through the tree line. At first, I thought I'd found another clearing, but looking down, I saw I was next to Arden's mutilated body. The wretched thing had just sent me in a circle. For fun. For the chase. I was tired, scared, covered in scratches and bruises over my entire body, and for nothing. I was still going to die. I turned to face my fate, and for the first time that night got a good look at my hunter. The moonlight shone on him in full, and what I saw was not human. It's hard to describe exactly, but everything about him was sharper. His fingers, his teeth, his face, his eyes, his skin. As I looked at him, the strangest thing popped into my head. Have you ever read The Duchess of Malfi? I had to study it for my O-levels many years ago. Dreadful play, as I remember, the worst sort of old revenge tragedy, all incest and murder and madness. There's a line that stays with me. A doctor diagnosing the Duchess's brother with lycanthropy. As I recall, it goes, "Once met the Duke, about midnight, in a lane behind St. Mark's Church, with the leg of a man upon his shoulder. Said he was a wolf. Only difference was, a wolf's skin is hairy on the outside, his on the inside." Looking at this thing that wanted to kill me. It's the only description that feels right. He didn't charge this time, but slowly stalked towards me. I was acutely aware of the loaded guns by my feet, but I'd seen how fast it could move, and I didn't rate my chances. It got close enough that I could smell the fetid breath, close enough that I could see the most disturbing thing illuminated by the moonlight. The slick drool on its lips as it salivated in anticipation of a kill. Then it attacked me. I am, in some ways, very proud of how I acted during that encounter. You see, as long as the thing didn't think I was any sort of threat, I hoped it might get sloppy and clearly telegraph its strike. I was right. It drew back its arm and swung a clumsy, triumphant blow. I forget, did I mention my military background? Well, I used to be an officer in the Air Force. Now, it's been a long time since the Gulf War, and I didn't do much in the way of hand-to-hand fighting even then, but the training is something that stays with you. It certainly served me well for this one desperate move. As I caught his arm and pitched his motion around, his claws dug into my shoulder but missed my neck, and he fell to the floor, tripped by his own momentum. He began to get to his feet almost immediately, but it brought me the precious seconds to grab my rifle and press it to his chest. I didn't hesitate. The shot ripped through him and he jerked in pain. Not wanting to take any chances, I fired again and again and again until my rifle was empty. Then I picked up Arden's rifle and emptied that one into him as well. Even after all of that, he still wasn't dead. He had 3 bullets in his heart, 2 in his head, and many more through the rest of him. But still he writhed there, making weak noises. I didn't know how long this would slow him down for, but I hoped it would give me enough time to escape properly.
Yes,
I looked
run.
back as I left the clearing to see him slowly and painfully pushing his claws into his chest, digging for the bullets. It was luck that saved me in the end. Some park rangers were driving past our trail on a road about 2 miles distant. They were coming to investigate the gunshots, and I stumbled onto the road through sheer good fortune. I never saw that thing again, or Arden, unfortunately, though they managed to find and recover his body about a week later. I don't think I'll try hunting again. I know the thrill of power that comes with the ability to end the life of something weaker than you, but I can't forget what it's like to be the hunted. Statement ends. Hunted. Yes. I think I'm starting to know the feeling. Arden Neely was found dead half a mile off the Appalachian Trail in Virginia on 1st December 2010. His death was ruled a wild animal attack. Mr. Mortimer was treated for physical and mental trauma, but was not implicated in his death. Quite frankly, that's all the investigation I'm willing to do on this one. Wolfmen in America is too far-fetched and too far away for me to care about. It's been 2 months now since Martin returned, and we became the ones being hunted. Are we being hunted? Martin's still living here, and I'm leaving less and less. The worms keep turning up. We kill them, but there are more each week. What is she waiting for? End recording.
All right. That was the first one. Well, for tonight. So that one, let me go to the description. So that one, if you think about the type of fear, it kind of sounded like vampires, right? Or werewolves, but the theme of that fear was hunting, or to be hunted, which is kind of nature. And it's still scary. So that's just one example of how they write to these different kinds of fears. And I really enjoy, I love good writing. I don't know where. I just finished this book by this Japanese author. Hold on. Ukitsu, I believe is the author's name. Let me type it, because that's... it's not gonna look great. But the name of the book is Strange Pictures, and I believe it's the author's first book translated into English. And they're a horror author, and it's so good. It's such a good book. But the way that they write, I thoroughly enjoy. Do they have the name? And like, You know how most authors will have their picture in the back of the book? I see the reason I'm not good with scary things is because I empathize easily and feel like I'm experiencing it myself. But I'm glad you were there. I too am on the empath vibes. It makes it really hard, especially like in person things too, right? But I think it also is nice to be so empathetic to, or empathetic to things around you, because it makes you more understanding of a person. And I think that's really beautiful. So even though you feel the scary things more, you also feel somebody else's joy and their happiness with them as well too. So I try to look at it like that sometimes when I'm like, I don't want to feel I don't want to feel everybody's things. But I think being a highly sensitive person is a gift. A gift and a curse at the same time, maybe. But yes, check out this author. So it says that his novels, Strange Pictures and Strange Houses, were massive hits in Japan where he lives. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with his writing, but I thoroughly enjoyed the book a lot. But I'm a sucker for good writing. And it doesn't matter what the subject is. If it's a research paper and it's written well, I will listen to it. But let me clear our timer. The next one is episode 32, The Hive. And let me check the description for this one. I think they started adding like the themes. So it says this one, statement regarding a wasp nest in the attic of the place where they work at. So let's listen and hear what this one is about. I really love our background music tonight. Another Dova piece. Oh. I see. Oh wait. Moreover, the reason we become emotionally invested is that we recognize the tone of the other people's voice, even if it's not in Japanese. I like that, and I agree with that. You can hear the inflections in someone's voice. So, for example, if you ask someone how are they doing, and they're like, I'm okay, you can hear that they're not okay, right? If you ask someone, how are you doing? And they're like, I'm okay. You know, like, You can hear that they're like, yeah, I'm good. So I think, how do I say it? Because I think culturally it's different, right? I think sometimes people are asked if they're doing okay, and they don't answer honestly. Not because they don't want to, but I think sometimes you can recognize, even by the way that the asker sounds, if that person really wants to hear what you have to say when they ask you a question, right? So sometimes someone's like, "Are you all right?" You can kind of hear that they don't really they don't really want to hear how you're doing. So you'll curtail your response, and maybe wait to have someone ask you that's really invested in what you have to say. I'm so happy to receive praise and affirmation. Aww. If that is your love language, is kind of one of the things that we talk about here sometimes. How can you? What can someone do for you to make you feel loved? And I think receiving praise and affirmations is a really good way to show someone that, you're pouring your affections back into that person. So I will say, I really appreciate your openness and conversation. I think that it's really beautiful that you can converse that way, even though we speak different languages. So thank you for chatting with me and being so open. I think it's really beautiful. Oh, I see I didn't finish my sentence. I think it's beautiful. Oh no, that one didn't translate. Hold on. Thank you. Wait, not Ohio. Arigato. There. You're very welcome. And I'm forgetting how to say you're welcome in Japanese. I should feel ashamed. I used to know various small talk, but now I have forgotten quite a lot. So I do know how to say goodnight. Oyasumi. It's a very beautiful language. Also one that I really appreciate how the inflections sound. I think it's another language that's easy to pick up emotion in, and I like that. Yeah. I also like the way that it sounds too. All right. Episode 32. The Hive. Our timer is reset. Oh, our background music. It's so pretty. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Rusty Quill presents the Magnus Archives. Episode 32, Hive. Statement of Jane Prentice regarding a wasp's nest in her attic. Original statement given February 23rd, 2014. Audio recording by Jonathan Sims, Head Archivist of the Magnus Institute, London. Statement begins. I itch all the time, deep beneath my skin where the bone sits, enshrined in flesh, I feel it. Something, not moving, but that...
I think this one is like a fear about bugs. So if you don't like bugs, then you might want to mute this episode. And I got our timer off, darn it.
wants to move, wants to be free. It itches, and I don't think I want it. I don't know what to do. You can't help me. I don't think so, at least, but whatever it is that calls to me, that wants me for its own, it hates you. It hates what you are and what you do, and if it hates you, then maybe you can help me. If I wanted to be helped. I don't know if I do. You must understand it sings so sweetly, and I need it, but I am afraid. It isn't right. And I need help. I need it to be seen in the cold light of knowledge is anathema to the things that crawl and slither and swarm in the corners and the cracks, in the pitted holes of the hive. You can't see it, of course. It isn't real. Not like you or I are real. It's more of an everywhere. A feeling. Are you familiar with Trypophobia? That disgusted fear at holes, irregular, honeycombed holes, makes you feel that itch in the back of your mind, like the holes are there too.
Fear of
in your
holes.
own brain, rotten and hollow and swarming. Is that real? I'm sorry, I know I'm meant to be telling you what happened, what brought me to this place of books and learning, of sight and beholding. I'm sorry. I should. I will. I haven't slept in some time. I can't sleep. My dreams are crawling and many-legged, not just slithering and burrowing, though it is the burrowing that draws me. They always sing that song of flesh. I hope you will forgive me for such a rambling story. I hope you will forgive me for a great many things, as it may be I do worse. I have that feeling, that instinct that squirms through your belly. There will be great violence done here, and I bleed into that violence. Do you know, I wonder, as I watch you sitting there through the glass, eating a sandwich, do you know where you are? You called me dear. Have a seat, dear. You can write it down, dear. Take as much time as you need, dear. Can you truly know the danger you are in? There is a wasp's nest in my attic. A fat, sprawling thing that crouches in the shadowed corner. It thrums with life and malice. I could sit there for hours watching the swirls of pulp and paper on its surface. I have done. It is not the patterns that enthrall me. I'm not one of those fools chasing fractals, no. It's what sings behind them. Sings that I am beautiful. Sings that I am a home. That I can be fully consumed by what loves me. I don't know how long the nest has been there. It's not even my house, I just live there. Some sweaty old man thinks he owns it, taking money for my presence as though it will save him. I used to worry about it, you know. I remember before the dreams I would spend so long worrying about that money, about how I could afford to live there. Now I know that whatever the old man thinks, as he passes about the house with brow crinkled and mouth puckered in disapproval, it is not his. It has 1,000 truer owners who shift and live and sing within the very walls of the building.
There's our
He does
reminder.
not even know about the wasp's nest. I wonder how long he has not known. How many years it has been there. Have you ever heard of the filarial worm? Mosquitoes gift it with their kiss, and it grows and grows. It stops water moving round the human body, right? Makes limbs and bellies swell and sag with fluid. Now when I look at that fat, sweaty sack, I think about it. And the voice sings of showing him what a real parasite can do. How many months has it been like this? Was there a time before? There must have been. I remember a life that was not itching, not fear, not nectar-sweet song. I had a job. I sold crystals. They were clean and sharp and bright, and they did not sing to me, though I sometimes said they did. We would sell the stones to smiling young couples with colour in their hair. I remember, before I found the nest, someone new came. His name was Oliver, and he would look at me so strangely, not with lust or affection or contempt, but with sadness. Such a deep sadness. And once with fear. It didn't matter, because no one in the shop wanted to hear about the ants below it. I tried to tell them to explain, but they did not care. The pretty young things complained, and I left. That was when I still called myself a witch. Wicca and paganism. I would spend my weekends at rituals by the Thames. I wanted something beyond myself, but could not stomach the priest or the imam or punjari of the churches. I knew better. I knew that it was not so simple as to call out to well-trodden gods. I never felt from my rituals anything except exhaustion and pride. I thought that those were my spiritual raptures. I wish, deep inside, below the itch, that they were still my raptures. I have touched something now, though, that all my talk of ley lines and mother goddesses could never have prepared me for. It is not a god. Or if it is, then it is a dead god, decayed and clammy corpse flesh, brimming with writhing grave worms. When did I first hear it? It wasn't the nest, I'm sure of that. I never went in the attic. It was locked and I didn't have a key. I spent a day sawing through the padlock with an old hacksaw. My hands were blistered by the end. Why would I have done that if I didn't know what I would find? The face of the one who sang to me, dwelling within the hidden darkness above me. I had seen no wasps. I know I hadn't. There are no wasps in the nest. So how else would I have known that I needed to be there, to be in the dark with it, if it had not already been singing to me? No, that's not right. The nest does not sing to me. It is simply the face. Not the whole face, for the whole of the hive is infinite, an unending plane of wriggling forms swarming in and out of the distended pores and honeycombed flesh. The nest is nothing but paper. Was it the spiders? There were webs in the corners around the entryway into the attic. I would watch them scurry and disappear in between the wooden boards. Where are you going, little spiders? I would think. What are you seeing in the dark? Is it food? Prey? Predators? I wondered if it was the spiders that made the gentle buzzing song, but it was not. Webs have a song as well, of course, but it is not the song of the hive. I used to pick at my skin. It was a compulsion. I would spend hours in the bathroom staring as close as I could get to my face in the mirror, searching for darkened pores to squeeze and watch the congealed oil worm its way out of my skin. Often I would end with swollen red marks where it had become inflamed with irritation or infection. Did I hear the song then? Was it when I was a child? Such a clear memory of a classmate telling me a blackhead was a hole in my face, and if I didn't keep it clean it would grow and rot. Did I hear it then? Has that image lodged in my mind forever? Or was it last year, passing by a strip of green they call a park near my house after the rain, and watching 100 worms crawl and squirm to the surface? Perhaps I've always heard it. Perhaps the itch has always been the real me, and it was the happy, smiling Jane who called herself a witch and drank wine in the park when it was sunny. Maybe it was her who was the maddened delusion that hides the sick, squirming reality of what I am, of what we all are when you strip away the pretense that there is more to a person than a warm, wet habitat for the billion crawling things that need a home, that love us in their way. I need to think, to clear my head, to try and remember, but remember what? I was lonely before, I know that. I had friends, at least I used to. But I lost them, or they lost me. Why was it? I remember shouting recriminations, and I was abandoned. No idea why. The memories are a blur. I do remember that they called me toxic. I don't think I really knew what that meant, except that it was the reason that I was so painfully lonely. Was that it? Was I swayed and drawn simply by the prospect of being genuinely loved? Not loved as you would understand it. A deeper, more primal love, a need as much as a feeling, love that consumes you in all ways. You can't help me. I'm sure of that now. I have tried
Let that
to
not
write
be
it down,
obsession.
to put it into terms and words you could understand, and now I stare at it, and not a word of it is even enough to fully describe the fact that I itch. Because itch is not the right word. There is no right word, because for all your institute and ignorance may laud the power of the word, it cannot even stretch to fully capture what I feel in my bones. What possible recourse could there be for me in your books and files and libraries except more useless ink and dying letters? I see now why the hive hates you. You can see it, and log it, and note its every detail, but you can never understand it. You rob it of its fear, even though your weak words have no right to do so. I do not know why the Hive chose me, but it did. And I think that it always had. The song is loud and beautiful, and I am so very afraid. There is a wasp's nest in my attic. Perhaps it can soothe my itching soul. Statement ends. This is, excuse me, reading that was, while I am pleased that we have found the statement the apprentice gave the Institute, it answers far fewer of our questions than I would have hoped, and gives us little new information about her than we had before, save for a snapshot of her mental condition before her hospital admission. We were already aware of her religious history and her breakdown over an ant infestation that apparently led to her termination from her work at the Good Energies spiritual supplies shop in Archway. The wasp's nest is interesting. The paramedics' report claims that when they and the police responded to reports of screaming at Ms. Prentice's flat on Prospero Road, they found her in a loft space, passed out, with her forearm buried up to the elbow in pulped organic matter. This could indeed have been a wasp's nest, I suppose, but no nearby residents reported to have seen any wasps in the area. Unfortunately, it could not be examined further, as later that night there was a fire that completely destroyed the flat and killed the landlord, Arthur Nolan. The fire service determined he had fallen asleep with a lit cigarette due to the fact that he was found sitting in the remains of an armchair with no sign he had made any attempt to escape. Miss Prentice was taken to the emergency department at Whittington Hospital, but she was already showing signs of the infestation that would characterize her later appearances. 6 hospital staff were attempting to treat and sedate her when many of the worms were violently expelled from her body. They quickly burrowed through the soft tissue of the medical personnel, eyes, tongue, etc., and into the brain, killing them after roughly a minute and a half. She then walked calmly out of the door to A&E. A nurse attempted to run, but in his panic, he tripped on the stairs and broke his neck. Then she was gone. The Institute was consulted, as apparently during her admission she had claimed that she was being possessed. But it was decided the situation was medical in nature, and our involvement was dropped in favor of what I can only describe as a cover-up. If we'd known about this statement, perhaps things might have been different, but here we are. Still, anyone who's familiarized themselves with her file could tell you this. We still don't have any evidence that Prentice is actually paranormal. It could just be an unknown aggressive parasite. There are weird things out there that are perfectly natural. It's not, though. I know it's not natural. Somehow I feel it. I'm sorry. My academic detachment seems to have fled me. Something in this statement has got to me a bit. I'm going to go lie down. End recording.
The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by rustyquill.com and
Uzumaki. Uzumaki. That is what that episode reminds me of. I almost got up and walked over to my bookshelf because I couldn't think of the name of it at first. I was like, what is it? What is it? And then I just researched it. But yes, that reminds me very strongly. It is Uzumaki, right? It's the fear of holes. I never really like that fear, actually, I think when I first heard of it, especially when I first heard of Uzumaki, I was like, I don't get it. Like, why would you just be afraid of holes? And then I started reading more of Ito's mangas, and I was like, oh, oh. But I don't think I've read or come upon anything that really went into the fear of holes like that until I read his manga. So then when I heard this episode, I was like, oh, there it is again. And then I think because they tie it in as well with this like bug aspect and worms, it becomes a bit more disturbing. But just like holes themselves, I don't think that was ever a fear that I had. Especially like think about cicada season. That also makes me think about that, because they just blindly try to like burrow themselves into anything, whether it's a person or a tree or the ground. I'm starting to feel a little sleepy. I always fall asleep around this time. Aww. Well, I think it's okay for you to fall asleep. That would make me happy if you fall asleep. I can actually, let's see, what time is it? It's 11. Let me see what the next episode is. Is it gonna be one that's gonna be scary? Let me check the description. And if it is one that's like not friendly for falling asleep, then maybe we can switch to reading for a little bit until you fall asleep. But let me see. I don't think this one is that scary. Talking with you so much today was very healing. I think I'll listen to the live stream or the archive while I sleep. Oh, well, you just gave me such a good warm feeling. That's not what I said. I have to look at the translator. Let me rephrase it. Your message gives me much comfort and happiness. There we go. Anything that I can do to bring my dreamers and my viewers comfort and healing is what I want. I want you to rest well, and I want you to dream well, and I want you to take care of yourself so that you can do your very best. That makes me very happy. So I will continue to try to do my best for you. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think this one is very happy, or not happy. I don't think this one is like a bad one to fall asleep to. But I also want you to fall asleep to my voice. Because I think that is why you're here. So, let's see. Since it's Google Translate, it might be a bit strange to dance. It is a bit strange sometimes. And, how do you say? I'm very soft-spoken, so I have to really turn my microphone up quite a bit because my voice on its own doesn't project well. And so sometimes it actually will start to hurt my throat when I try to speak very loudly because it's mostly a mumble and a whisper. So, but let's take a break from our episodes. We're on episode 33. And let me read to you for a little bit since you're getting sleepy. And hopefully it will help you to fall asleep. And then we'll read a chapter, and then we'll go back to listening. Alright. I hope the background music is not going to be too loud. I'll lower it just a little bit. I think it's really relaxing though, so I don't want to lower it too much. I'm a little sad because if I could speak English, I could communicate much better. That's okay. Don't be sad. Hold on. I'm gonna type it, but then I'm also going to read what I say as well too. Because I'm gonna put it in Google Translate, or I like using Papago, the Navarre, I think that's how you say it, translator. But let me type this out really quick. Sometimes the translator is just not okay. But let me send this message and then I'll read to you what I said. Oh no, it's too long. I don't think you've said anything rude. So please do not worry. I will tell you. Alright, now let me read it. Sometimes it is not that what we say to others has to sound grammatically correct. Because when you're talking to the right person, they will understand what the heart is trying to say. So no matter what the language is or how the message may seem to mess up, they'll understand what you mean. I understand that some things culturally are very hard to convey, especially when it comes to our emotions. So please just do your best and don't worry about the rest. As long as we try to communicate clearly, that is all that one could ask. Yes. I hope that came out the right way. It doesn't look like it translated the right way, at least the first part. Wow. But let me read for you a little, dear. And I will stop and talk to you if you want to talk, but I want to help you to try to sleep as well. I'm so happy to have met such a kind person. Aww. I'm so happy to have met such a kind person as well. You are very sweet. And you can always be kind and gentle here. I know that all creators are not always so soft. But I really like being soft, and I love being gentle with the people around me. Oh, of course, honey. I'll use your reading as background music for sleep. I hope you have a good day. Oyasumira. Good night, dear. Alright. We are going to pick back up with our book, The House on the Borderland. And we're on chapter 22. Please allow yourself to fall asleep to the sound of my voice. And after we finish this chapter, we'll start back with the Magnus Archive. And I might fall asleep soon too. So we can be cozy in the pillow fort together. Alright. The Dark Nebula. Years melted into the past, centuries, aeons. The light of the incandescent star sank to a furious red. It was later that I saw the dark nebula. At first, an impalpable cloud away to my right. It grew steadily to a clot of blackness in the night. How long I watched, it is impossible to say, for time, as we count it, was a thing of the past. It came closer, a shapeless monstrosity of darkness, tremendous. It seemed to slip across the night sleepily, a very hell fog. Slowly, it slid nearer and passed into the void between me and the central suns. It was as though a curtain had been drawn before my vision. A strange tremor of fear took me, and a fresh sense of wonder. The green twilight that had reigned for so many millions of years had now given place to impenetrable gloom. Motionless, I peered about me. A century fled, and it seemed to me that I detected occasional dull glows of red passing me at intervals. Earnestly, I gazed, and presently seemed to see circular masses that showed muddily red within the clouded blackness. They appeared to be growing out of the nebulous murk. A while, and they became plainer to my accustomed vision. I could see them now with a fair amount of distinctness, ruddy tinged spears, similar in size to the luminous globes that I had seen so long previously. They floated past me continually. Gradually, a peculiar uneasiness seized me. I became aware of a growing feeling of repugnance and dread. It was directed against those passing orbs and seemed born of intuitive knowledge rather than of any real cause or reason. Some of the passing globes were brighter than others, and it was from one of these that a face looked suddenly. A face, human in its outline, but so tortured with woe that I stared aghast. I had not thought there was such sorrow as I saw there. I was conscious of an added sense of pain on perceiving that the eyes which glared so wildly were sightless. A while longer, I saw it, and then it had passed on into the surrounding gloom. After this, I saw others, all wearing that look of hopeless sorrow, and blind. A long time went by, and I became aware that I was nearer to the orbs than I had been. At this, I grew uneasy, though I was less in fear of those strange globules than I had been before seeing their sorrowful inhabitants, for sympathy had tempered my fear. Later, there was no doubt but that I was being carried closer to the red spheres, and presently I floated among them. In a while, I perceived one bearing down upon me. I was helpless to move from its path. In a minute, it seemed, it was upon me, and I was submerged in a deep red mist. This cleared, and I stared confusedly across the immense breadth of the plain of silence. It appeared just as I had first seen it. I was moving forward, steadily across its surface. Away ahead shone the vast blood-red ring that lit that place. All around was spread the extraordinary dissolution of stillness that had so impressed me during my previous wandering across its starkness. Presently, I saw rising up into the ruddy gloom the distant peaks of the mighty amphitheater of mountains where untold ages before I had been shown my first glimpse of the terrors that underlie many things, and where vast and silent, watched by 1,000 mute gods, stands the replica of this house of mysteries, this house that I had seen swallowed up in that hellfire ere the earth had kissed the sun and vanished forever. Though I could see the crest of the mountain amphitheater, yet it was a great while before their lower portions became visible. Possibly this was due to the strange ruddy haze that seemed to cling to the surface of the plain. However, be this as it may, I saw them at last. In a still further space of time, I had come so close to the mountains that they appeared to overhang me. Presently, I saw the great rift open before me, and I drifted into it without volition on my part. Later, I came out upon the breadth of the enormous arena. There, at an apparent distance of some 5 miles, stood the house, huge, monstrous, and silent, lying in the very center of that stupendous amphitheater. So far as I could see, it had not altered in any way, but looked as though it were only yesterday that I had seen it. Around the grim, dark mountains frowned down upon me from their lofty silences. Far to my right, away up among inaccessible peaks, loomed the enormous bulk of the great beast god. Higher, I saw the hideous form of the dread goddess rising up through the red gloom, thousands of fathoms above me. To the left, I made out the monstrous, eyeless thing, gray and inscrutable. Further off, reclining on its lofty ledge, the livid ghoul-shaped showed a splash of sinister color among the dark mountains. Slowly, I moved out across the great arena, floating. As I went, I made out the dim forms of many of the other lurking horrors that peopled those supreme heights. Gradually, I neared the house, and my thoughts flashed back across the abyss of years. I remembered the dread specter of the place. A short while passed, and I saw that I was being wafted directly towards the enormous mass of that silent building. About this time, I became aware in an indifferent sort of way of a growing sense of numbness that robbed me of the fear which I should otherwise have felt on approaching that awesome pile. As it was, I viewed it calmly, much as a man views calamity through the haze of his tobacco smoke. In a little while, I had come so close to the house as to be able to distinguish many of the details about it. The longer I looked, the more was I confirmed in my long ago impressions of its entire similitude to this strange house. Save in its enormous size, I could find nothing unalike. Suddenly, as I stared, a great feeling of amazement filled me. I had come opposite to that part where the outer door leading into the study is situated. There, lying right across the threshold, lay a great length of coping stone, identical save in size and color with the piece I had dislodged in my fight with the pit creatures. I floated nearer, and my astonishment increased as I noticed that the door was broken partly from its hinges, precisely in the manner that my study door had been forced inward by the assaults of the swine things. The sight started a train of thoughts, and I began to trace dimly that the attack on this house might have a far deeper significance than I had hitherto imagined. I remembered how long ago in the old Earth days I had half suspected that in some unexplainable manner this house in which I live was in rapport, to use a recognized term, with that other tremendous structure away in the midst of that incomparable plain. Now, however, it began to be borne upon me that I had but vaguely conceived what the realization of my suspicion meant. I began to understand with a more than human clearness that the attack I had repelled was in some extraordinary manner connected with an attack upon that strange edifice. With a curious inconsequence, my thoughts abruptly left the matter to dwell wonderingly upon the peculiar material out of which the house was constructed. It was, as I have mentioned earlier, of a deep green color. Yet, now that I had come so close to it, I perceived that it fluctuated at times, though slightly, glowing and fading, much as do the fumes of phosphorus when rubbed upon the hand in the dark. Presently, my attention was distracted by this, by coming to the great entrance. Here, for the first time, I was afraid, for all in a moment the huge doors swung back, and I drifted in between them helplessly. Inside, all was blackness, impalpable. In an instant, I had crossed the threshold, and the great doors closed silently, shutting me in that lightless place. For a while, I seemed to hang motionless, suspended amid the darkness. And then I became conscious that I was moving again. Where? I could not tell. Suddenly, far down beneath me, I seemed to hear a murmurous noise of swine laughter. It sank away, and the succeeding silence appeared clogged with horror. Then a door opened somewhere ahead. A white haze of light filtered through, and I floated slowly into a room that seemed strangely familiar. All at once, there came a bewildering screaming noise that deafened me. I saw a blurred vista of visions flaming before my sight. My senses were dazed for the space of an eternal moment. Then my power of seeing came back to me. The dizzy, hazy feeling had passed, and I saw clearly. That is the end of that chapter. Next is chapter 23, and it is titled Pepper. I was seated in my chair, back again in this old study. My glance wandered round the room. For a minute, it had a strange, quivery appearance, unreal and unsubstantial. This disappeared, and I saw that nothing altered in any way. I looked towards the end window. The blind was up. I rose to my feet shakily. As I did so, a slight noise in the direction of the door attracted my attention. I glanced toward it. For a short instant, it appeared to me that it was being closed gently. I stared and saw that I must have been mistaken. It seemed closely shut. With a succession of efforts, I trod my way to the window and looked out. The sun was just rising, lighting up the tangled wilderness of gardens. For perhaps a minute, I stood and stared. I passed my hand confusedly across my forehead. Presently, amid the chaos of my senses, a sudden thought came to me. I turned quickly and called to Pepper. There was no answer, and I stumbled across the room in a quick access of fear. As I went, I tried to frame his name, but my lips were numb. I reached the table and stooped down to him with a catching at my heart. He was lying in the shadow of the table, and I had not been able to see him distinctly from the window. Now, as I stooped, I took my breath shortly. There was no Pepper. Instead, I was reaching toward an elongated little heap of gray, ash-like dust. I must have remained in that half-stooped position for some minutes. I was dazed, stunned. Pepper had really passed into the land of shadows. The footsteps in the garden. Pepper is dead. Even now, at times, I seem scarcely able to realize that this is so. It is many weeks since I came back from that strange and terrible journey through space and time. Sometimes in my sleep, I dream about it and go through in imagination the whole of that fearsome happening. When I wake, my thoughts dwell upon it. That sun, those suns, were they indeed the great central suns, round which the whole universe of unknown heavens revolves? Who shall say? And the bright globules floating forever in the light of the green sun, and the sea of sleep on which they float. How unbelievable it all is. If it were not for Pepper, I should even, after the many extraordinary things that I have witnessed, be inclined to imagine that it was but a gigantic dream. Then there is that dreadful dark nebula with its multitudes of red spears, moving always within the shadow of the dark sun, sweeping along on its stupendous orbit, wrapped eternally in gloom. And the faces that peered out to me, God, do they and does such a thing really exist? There is still that little heap of gray ash on my study floor. I will not have it touched. At times, when I am calmer, I have wondered what became of the outer planets of the solar system. It has occurred to me that they may have broken loose from the sun's attraction and whirled away into space. This is, of course, only a surmise. There are so many things about which I wonder. Now that I am writing, let me record that I am certain there is something horrible about to happen. Last night, a thing occurred which has filled me with an even greater terror than did the pit fear. I will write it now, and if anything more happens, endeavor to make a note of it at once. I have a feeling that there is more in this last affair than in all those others. I am shaky and nervous even now as I write. Somehow, I think death is not very far away. Not that I fear death, as death is understood. Yet, there is that in the air which bids me fear an intangible, cold horror. I felt it last night. It was thus. Last night, I was sitting here in my study writing. The door leading into the garden was half open. At times, the metallic rattle of a dog's chain sounded faintly. It belonged to the dog I have bought since Pepper's death. I will not have him in the house, not after Pepper. Still, I have felt it better to have a dog about the place. They are wonderful creatures. I was much engrossed in my work, and the time passed quickly. Suddenly, I heard a soft noise on the path outside in the garden. Pad, 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 it went with a stealthy, curious sound. I sat upright with a quick movement and looked out through the open door. Again, the noise came. Pad, pad, pad. It appeared to be approaching. With a slight feeling of nervousness, I stared into the gardens, but the night hid everything. Then the dog gave a long howl, and I started. For a minute, perhaps, I peered intently, but could hear nothing. After a little, I picked up the pen, which I had laid down, and recommenced my work. The nervous feeling had gone, for I imagined that the sound I had heard was nothing more than the dog walking round his kennel at the length of his chain. A quarter of an hour may have passed. Then, all at once, the dog howled again, and with such a plaintive, sorrowful note that I jumped to my feet, dropping my pen and inking the page on which I was at work. "Curse that dog," I muttered, noting what I had done. Then, even as I said the words, there sounded again that queer pad, pad, pad. It was horribly close, almost by the door, I thought. I knew now that it could not be the dog. His chain would not allow him to come so near. The dog's growl came again, and I noted subconsciously the faint of fear in it. Outside, on the windowsill, I could see Tip, my sister's pet cat. As I looked, it sprang to its feet, its tail swelling visibly. For an instant, it stood thus, seeming to stare fixedly at something in the direction of the door. Then quickly, it began to back along the sill until, reaching the wall at the end, it could go no further. There it stood, rigid, as though frozen in an attitude of extraordinary terror. Frightened and puzzled, I seized a stick from the corner and went towards the door silently, taking one of the candles with me. I had come to within a few paces of it when suddenly a peculiar sense of fear thrilled through me, a fear palpitant and real, whence I knew not, nor why. So great was the feeling of terror that I wasted no time, but retreated straight away, walking backwards and keeping my gaze fearfully on the door. I would have given much to rush at it, fling it, and shoot the bolts, for I have had it repaired and strengthened, so that now it is far stronger than ever it has been. Like Tip, I continued my almost unconscious progress backward until the wall brought me up. At that, I started nervously and glanced round apprehensively. As I did so, my eyes dwelt momentarily on the rack of firearms, and I took a step towards them, but stopped, with a curious feeling that they would be needless. Outside, in the gardens, the dog moaned strangely. Suddenly, from the cat, there came a fierce, long shriek. I glanced jerkily in its direction. Something luminous and ghostly encircled it and grew upon my vision. It resolved into a glowing hand, transparent, with a lambent greenish flame flickering over it. The cat gave a last awful caterwaul, and I saw it smoke and blaze. My breath came with a gasp, as I leant against the wall. Over that part of the window there spread a smudge, green and fantastic. It hid the thing from me, though the glare of fire shone through dully. A stench of burning stole into the room. Pad, pad, pad. Something passed down the garden path, and a faint, moldy odor seemed to come in through the open door and mingle with the burnt smell. The dog had been silent for a few moments. Now I heard him yowl sharply as though in pain. Then he was quiet, save for an occasional subdued whimper of fear. The dog had been silent for a few moments. Now I heard him yowl sharply as though, A minute went by, and then the gate on the west side of the garden slammed distantly. After that, nothing, not even the dog's whine. I must have stood there some minutes. Then a fragrance of courage stole into my heart, and I made a frightened rush at the door, dashed into and bolted it. After that, for a full half-hour, I sat, helpless, staring before me, rigidly. Slowly, my life came back into me, and I made my way shakily upstairs to bed. That is all. All right. We will stop there. Those chapters were very short, so I wanted to read a couple more to make sure that you're able to get to sleep, hopefully. We will continue back now with our listening of the Magnus Archive. And again, I appreciate you being here. Even if you're just quietly listening, thank you for spending your time here with me. Alright, we are on episode 33, Boatswain's Call. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Rusty Quill presents The Magnus Archives. Episode 33, Boatswain's Call.
Tim. I'd love to discuss this further, but as you can see, I have a recording.
Oh, come on. Look, it's not a big deal. We just need to do a few of them again.
Out of the question.
It's just confusing if not. Like the garbage man statement.
Mr. Woodward?
Yeah, so you said that Alan Parfit was reported missing in August 2009, which would actually be 6 months after the statement had been given.
Obviously, it should have been 2008. I misspoke an 8 as a 9. What does it matter?
Well, someone noticed.
Who?
Josh Cole. Great guy. He's one of the students using our resources for a dissertation. Oh, and here, in Miss Montauk's statement about her father's killings, you refer to case 9220611 as case 110692. Oh, and don't get me started on the other case numbers around the hilltop hauntings. They're a mess.
Alleged hauntings. And who honestly cares if I misspoke case 9220611 as 110692? Another student?
Well, actually, yes. Samantha Emery. She's lovely. She's actually doing a PhD in manifestation.
I don't care. It's not enough that Gertrude left us with such a pointlessly awkward filing system. Half the time she doesn't even stay consistent in her own records.
To be honest with you, I don't really understand the system.
Last 3 digits of the year, then the day, then the month. I don't know why she did it like that, but I can't change it now.
Oh, okay. All right, so what happens if more than one statement is given on the same day?
I don't know. It nenever came up. Was there anything else?
Oh, yeah, just one.
Good Lord.
So, in case 816-3103, it isn't clear if Albrecht's wife is called Clara or Carla, because you keep switching back and forth.
Well, I'm sorry if I found it hard to read a 200-year-old letter written in cursive by a native German speaker. Who complained about that one?
Oh, it's not a complaint. I just noticed, actually. Look, okay, I know you've been under a lot of pressure. It's not a big deal. I just think it might be worth re-recording these statements.
No. I don't have time. I still have a mountain of haphazard statements to get through, not to mention that I need to keep this wretched tape recorder on hand, just in case I encounter one of the files too stubborn to work on anything else, and when I do, I have to actually read the damn thing, which is fine. It's fine. I just haven't been sleeping much these last few months. What with all this worm business, which reminds me, if you do see Elias, tell him thanks for the extra extinguishers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. It's getting bad. I mean, Martin keeps showing me his tongue, asking if it looks infested. So what do you want me to do about these errors?
I really don't care. But post it on the tapes or something. I'm not re-recording them. Now, if you'll excuse me...
Oh, yeah, sure, yep, I'll let you get back to it.
Right. Oh. Still running. Okay. Statement of Carlita Sloane regarding her work on a container ship traveling to Southampton from Porto de Tarqui. Original statement given January the 2nd, 2011. Audio recording by Jonathan Sims, head archivist of the Magnus Institute, London. Statement begins. I've been working the shipping routes for years now, so I know there's plenty of messed up things can happen out there. You remember the old saying, worse things happen at sea? Well, let me tell you, it's just as true now as it ever was. But I've never seen weird like I saw when serving on the Tundra. I didn't even want the job, really, but I didn't have a lot of choice. We'd just hit Porto de Tarqui in Brazil in late November of last year when the ship I was on got stopped because of cargo irregularities. I don't know what it was. Might have been drugs, human trafficking. Might have just been a crooked harbour master looking for a kickback, but it didn't really matter. Point was, I had to jump ship. This wasn't an easy thing, though. A sailors' union should be recognized anywhere in the world, but when it came down to it, my membership of Nautilus, a UK union, meant nothing when I was trying to get a place on a cargo run coming out of Brazil. Didn't help that I'm a woman. A lot of people don't think shipping is a job for women. Hell, a lot of people who work on ships don't think it is. You don't see a lot of us in the trade, and every ounce of respect I got, some dick-waving asshole probably bled for. But that's fine. I can hold my own, and it hasn't been such a problem since I shaved my head. It was enough to keep me on land for a good few days, though, as I tried to find another ship to take me on. Well, that and my bad Spanish. I'm sure I don't need to tell you how relieved I was when I heard that a British ship had made port, the Tundra. Now, at that point, I was starting to get a bit desperate, so I was keen to go to the captain and just about beg passage. Screw my qualifications. If he needed, I'd sign on as a workaway. I could find a better position once I was somewhere I spoke the language properly. I eventually found the captain in a small bar in one of the seedier areas of the dockside. I'd been told his name was Peter Lucas, but to be honest, I wouldn't have needed his name. He was the only white guy in the place. Even by those standards, he was very pale. Weirdly so for someone who apparently lived their life on the sea. He sat there at a small table completely alone, drinking a cup of black coffee. He was staring into the distance and didn't seem to notice anything going on around him. I sat down opposite and coughed. His eyes only moved a fraction of an inch to focus on me, but it felt as though the movement had the weight of a heavy stone door. Like a tomb. Don't know why that's what popped into my head, but there you go. I asked if he was Peter Lucas, and he said yes. I'd gone blank on what to say next, and it was then that I noticed the silence. I looked around to see that the place was now completely empty. Even the bartender was nowhere to be seen, and the only sound was the whir of the ceiling fans above us. The captain was still staring at me, so I swallowed my unease and began to explain my situation to him. I left out the part about the criminal possibilities of my last ship, but was clear that I was in desperate need of a new post. When I had finished, he was quiet for a few minutes. Then he nodded. "We have one space. Report tomorrow. At dawn." That was all he said, and it was all I needed. The Tundra wasn't difficult to find when I headed to the docks the next day. It was big, already stacked high with an array of colourful shipping containers. I wondered if they'd loaded it up overnight, as there didn't seem to be much activity from the crane. It was early, and I was glad I was leaving Brazil before the wet season really got going, as the sky was threatening to break. Making my way through the dock, I asked around until I was finally pointed to the mate. He was a short man, heavy-set with a thick black beard. His warm brown skin was stained darker by a life working in the sun, and he didn't smile when he looked at me. Around his neck, I saw a chain ending in a small brass ball and stem. It looked like an old boatswain's call, an antique sailor's whistle. I introduced myself, told him what I'd told the captain, and gave my qualifications and experience. The bearded mate listened quietly until I finished. Then he shrugged and said they were in need of an ordinary seaman, and I was welcome to the position if I wanted it. OS was a bit of a step down for me, as I'd been pulling able seaman pay for these last few years, but it was a ticket out of Porto de Itaqui, so I jumped at the chance. The mate still didn't smile, but he did offer his hand, and introduced himself in a gentle Dutch accent as Thaddeus Dahl, first mate of the Tundra. I was surprised, as it seemed a bit abrupt to be leaving, and I hadn't even had time to stow away the duffel bag that was my only luggage. Still, I wasn't about to disobey the first order I'd been given on a new ship. The Tundra was pretty normal. I've served on a half-dozen ships almost identical to it, and I fell into my duties quickly. We set off almost as soon as I was on board, and it was only later I discovered we were heading across the Atlantic towards Southampton. I was very happy to find that out, as I had assumed we'd be making plenty more stops before crossing back to England. With any luck, it wouldn't be more than a couple of weeks before I was home, and those would be spent in maintenance, repainting, and taking watches with Iron Mike, the autopilot, so that was fine. But I did start to notice a few things on board which didn't really seem to add up. The first was the crew. They were quiet, Very quiet. I mean, I've been on ships where I was pretty much the only native English speaker, and plenty of people prefer to keep to themselves. Hell, not being too comfortable around people is a damn fine reason to go to sea. This was different, though. It wasn't just that they didn't talk much, they seemed uncomfortable with me. They'd avoid eye contact and only barely acknowledge me if we were on shift together. At first I thought it was because I was a woman, but then I saw that it wasn't just me. They avoided each other just as much as they did me. Meals were always quiet, no matter how many people were eating, and there was no friendly game of cards or chat in the living quarters. There was no real conversation in any language. It was like they were doing everything in their power not to think about each other. It took me less than a day of ignored hellos and grunted answers before I fell into line, becoming just as quiet as my crewmates. The only person who spoke was Thaddeus Dahl. The mate would walk among the crew, giving instructions and orders in a dozen different languages as the crew scrambled to carry out his commands. He was just as composed as he had been when I met him, and it soon became clear that if he had emotions, he kept a tight wrap on them. He would stride along the ship, his antique whistle swinging from his neck. He never actually blew the boatswain's call, apparently preferring to summon the crew via the intercom or horn. It just hung there, its polished brass heavy around his neck. I didn't see Captain Lucas at all that first week. I only knew he was on board because every mealtime the cooks would hand a tray of food to the mate, who'd take it up to the captain's cabin. We never saw the man himself, though. There was one crew member who did catch my eye. He was a young guy, white, and, from what I could tell, Scottish. I never really got more than his name out of him. Sean Kelly. He had the bunk opposite me, and we were on different shifts, so I would often see him lying there when I returned from my night watch. He didn't talk any more than the others, but he also didn't go around with that blank look on his face. He looked scared. There were other odd things about the ship, but hands down the weirdest thing I didn't notice until a few days out into the Atlantic. Now, one of my duties was to check the deck containers were securely in place. None of the twist locks or lashing rods had broken or come loose. It was usually just busy work. I'd never been on a ship that lost a container, though it does happen. This shift, though, I noticed something wrong. I saw that one of the lashing rods towards the stern had broken, and not at one of the ends, or the twist lock itself, but right in the middle of what should have been solid metal. From a distance it looked fine, new paint shining in the sun, but looking closer I saw that it had rusted all the way through. Not just that, but checking out where the rod connected to the container, it became clear that they had rusted together. Fresh paint covered up most of it, but once I knew what I was looking for, I saw it everywhere. The shipping containers, all of them, were rusted in place. How could this have happened, though, if they were being changed over at port? How long had the Tundra been sailing with the same cargo? I decided I had to look inside. Stupid, maybe. If it was something illegal, they might toss me overboard first and ask questions never, but only if I got caught. And I was just about sick of nasty surprises. I did it on my next late shift. I kept an eye on the rest of the crew and waited for my moment. I'd already marked out a ground-level container where the padlock had practically rusted off. It wouldn't be difficult to get it open. It was about 3 a.m. when I had my chance. I was alone on deck, and the wind was howling, loud enough to muffle the groan of the container's rusted hinges. It took 3 kicks from my steel toe caps to get it open, but finally I was able to get the door ajar. It was so stiff it took almost all my strength to get enough of a gap to walk through, but finally I could see inside. It was completely empty. There was no sign of cargo or any markings or debris on the floor that might have shown that there had ever been anything inside. I couldn't believe it. A transport ship with nothing to transport. It didn't make any sense. I managed to bust 2 other containers open, but they were the same. As far as I could tell, every container on the ship was empty. I was still trying to figure out what this could mean when I saw a couple of torches approaching. I almost panicked and ran, but where exactly was I going to escape to? The empty, uncaring ocean stretched out for hundreds of miles in every direction. So instead I swallowed my fear and pushed the door carefully closed, trying my best to hide the broken lock before making my way onto the deck. I was met by the mate and a half-dozen other crewmen behind him. He looked at me for a second, then nodded and told me to follow. Then he continued walking. Confused, I headed after them as they made their way around the ship, silently collecting up or waking all the rest of the crew. I started to ask what was going on, but the glares I got shut me right up. Finally, when we had what looked like the whole crew together, we walked over to the lifeboat. Now, we definitely weren't sinking, so I hadn't really paid much attention to the lifeboat before, but now that I looked at it, I realized it wasn't what I'd have expected. Most modern container ships have a lifeboat that looks more like a lumpy orange blob than a boat. They're designed to be quickly and safely dropped into the water and tough out whatever conditions the sea might throw at them. But this was an old-fashioned boat, with oars and a winch mechanism for lowering it into the water. It didn't even look like it had any supplies in it. Standing there in front of it was Captain Lucas, as silent as the rest of his crew. The captain nodded, and one by one the crew of the Tundra got on board the lifeboat. I got on too. I mean, what else was I supposed to do? I didn't know what was going on, and no one seemed to want to tell me, but I sure as hell wasn't getting left alone on that big empty ship. So I got in and sat down, as a couple of the crew began to lower the lifeboat into the sea. A few others took up the oars, and as soon as we hit the water, they began to row quietly away from the Tundra, which floated, motionless. The sky was clear, and the wind had died down, so the stars reflected perfectly on the still ocean surface. All the lights on the ship had been turned off, so the world and all the empty horizon was only lit by the moon. As we rowed, I looked around my companions on the lifeboat. Everyone I recognized was there, except for one. I checked each face in turn, but I could see no sign of Sean Kelly, my scared bunkmate. Had we left him behind? Was he still back on the ship, sleeping away, ignorant of the fact that he was now utterly and completely alone? Almost as though he knew I was about to speak, Thaddeus gave me a warning glare. The mate reached down and took the old brass whistle from his neck. He pressed it to his lips and blew. I have never heard a whistle sound like that. It was shrill, so high and piercing that I felt my hair stand on end, but it also seemed distant, like I was hearing it from far, far away. I don't know how long he blew that bosun's call for, but by the end, I realized we were surrounded by a thick sea smoke. We should have been too far south for it, but it rolled and billowed around the lifeboat, obscuring the tundra. No one said a word, but I could have sworn a few of my shipmates were crying. I don't know how long we floated there, sat in the dark water, but eventually the fog cleared, and the mate sounded the bosun's call again, this time a short, sharp whistle. We saw the tundra, dark and still upon the water, and began to row back towards it. The lifeboat was painstakingly raised, and the rest of the crew returned to their positions. Sean Kelly was nowhere to be seen, and I never saw him again. After that night, the atmosphere on board changed. People talked, and you'd occasionally hear actual laughter. Games were played, people drank, and there was this sense of relief to it all. I tried to join in, but got dark looks any time I asked about Sean. At one point, the third mate, a man named Kim Duong, told me that I should shut up and be grateful, as it hadn't been an easy choice. I kept to myself the rest of the way and left the ship as soon as we landed in Southampton. I didn't even think about my pay until it came through a couple of days later. £25,000 for barely 2 weeks' work. I don't mind telling you, it was almost enough to tempt me back. Almost. Statement ends. An interesting statement, though difficult to investigate any potentially paranormal activity, as there does not appear to have been anything explicitly supernatural occurring in this statement. A lot of strange happenings and implicit weirdness, but nothing that can be isolated as a supernatural event. There's also the fact that even a casual search of Port Authority records shows the Tundra is a currently active cargo ship operating for Solace Shipping plc, a company founded and majority owned by Nathaniel Lucas. In addition to such business ventures, the Lucas family also provides funding to several academic and research organizations, including the Magnus Institute. Much as I want to dig further into this, especially given certain parallels with case 0161301, Elias gets very twitchy when we look into anything that might conceivably have funding repercussions. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do any further investigations into this, even though the official crew manifest for the Tundra has remained the same for the last 10 years, even though I can't find any record of actual cargo being loaded or unloaded into it from any UK port, even though Sean Kelly disappeared from the port of Felixstowe in October 2010, and his body washed up on the coast of Morocco in April 2011, 6 months later. According to the coroner, it had only been in the water for 5 days. Maybe I'll mention it to Elias, just in case. End recording.
So that was one of the episodes that I hadn't remembered very well. And now going back and listening to it again, one of the themes, like one of the fear themes, is like the fear of being alone. And I wonder about that. Like, I wonder about these concepts and if these sort of like gods of these fears like were to be something that was really like the driving force behind, like our own natural fears. But wouldn't you find it so strange to go somewhere and be on a job and no one talks to you, and how lonely that would feel? And maybe that is what they mean when they talk about, people dying of loneliness. Do you think that you'd feel more alone with so many people around you than being alone and by yourself? I believe I would feel much more lonely if I was surrounded by people and no one acknowledged that I even existed. Almost like Rascal Does Not Dream Up Bunny Girl Senpai. Oh, the EP is coming. Episode 34. Anatomy class. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Rusty Quill presents the Magnus Archives. Episode 34, Anatomy Class.
Apologies for the somewhat archaic...
No need to worry, I understand. Some things you just can't trust to computers. It's like I always say about those robotic surgery machines. It's just not the same. If I'm going to be operating on a man's pancreas, I want to feel that pancreas. Fiddling with a joystick just won't cut it, as it were.
I didn't think you still performed surgery.
I keep up with the developments. And I remember the feel of a pancreas.
Well, quite. Now, if you'd be so good as to...
You know you have an infestation, don't you?
Excuse me? I'm not sure that...
Yes, little grey maggot things. I saw a few on the way in. Don't recognize the species, but I'd say you need to get the exterminators in here. Gas the little blighters.
You saw them. You weren't bitten, were you?
Bitten? They're worms. Still, I'll admit I don't like the look of them. I reckon the sooner you get someone in to kill them dead, the better.
We've tried, believe me. Now, shall we?
Oh, certainly. Where do you want me to start? The bones? Blood? The fruit?
Right from the beginning. 1 second. Statement of Dr. Lionel Elliot regarding a series of events that took place during his class...
Introduction to Human Anatomy and Physiology.
At King's College, London, in early 2016. Statement recorded direct from subject, 12th July, 2016. Statement begins.
Now?
Yes, just start from the beginning.
Right. Well, I shouldn't even have been teaching the class, really. As far as I knew, I wasn't going to be needed for any teaching on the biomedical engineering course this year. I can't say I was particularly upset. The human anatomy module is where a lot of the engineers discover just how messy the human body is. And while the human heart is a phenomenal piece of machinery in terms of design and function, most of the students would be more comfortable holding a transistor. Not to put too fine a point on it, I get tired of squeamish students, and was glad that I could avoid it this year. You can perhaps imagine, then, that I was not best pleased when Elena Bauer, the admissions officer, emailed me last November to say that there had been a mistake, and I was needed to take a spillover class. Apparently, the system had accepted more students for the course than there were places, and they were trying to organize an additional class for the 7 who were unassigned. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. Anatomy class wasn't until the 2nd term, so surely this mistake should have emerged earlier. But Elena kept saying she didn't know. She just had 7 students who needed tutorials. I won't pretend I took the news gracefully. I have a lot of research due shortly, and, well, you know academia. Never enough hours in the day. Still, I was the only staff member both qualified to teach the class and technically free when it had to be scheduled. So I agreed, although that really makes it sound like I had more of a choice than I actually did. I didn't meet the students until the module started this January. I wasn't responsible for any of the lectures, so the first time I saw them was in our initial class tutorial. They all sat there, all 7, staring at me, and I felt oddly uncomfortable. There was nothing wrong with them, of course. Nothing strange to see or to look at. Just, well, this is going to sound stupid to say out loud, but I don't remember what they looked like. Any of them. I remember that each wore blue jeans and a white shirt, though they were all different makes and styles. I think one of the girls had a skirt instead. I must have noticed that they were wearing the same outfits, but it didn't strike me as odd. They all just looked so normal, unremarkable. I remember their names, though, from the register. They stuck with me, maybe because they were such an international group. There was Erika Musterman, Jan Novak, Pyotr and Pavel Petrov, who I think were brothers, maybe twins, John Doe, Falan Al-Falani, and Juan Perez. I greeted them when I entered the room and was met with silence. Not a malicious or angry silence, just silence. I've never been self-conscious when teaching, but walking to my seat with those 14 eyes just watching me, it made me ever so slightly uncomfortable. I got the oddest feeling that they were judging my walk. The class began, and we started going over some of the basics of anatomy and how the body works. They started to talk then, and some of my unease left me. I don't remember exactly what was said. After doing it long enough, most tutorials just kind of blur together a bit. But I recall being struck by just how basic some of their questions were. The composition of blood, where in the body the various organs sat, the sort of thing that anyone who's done a science GCSE should know. I was almost tempted to ask where they went to school. At the time, I didn't question the fact that they must have all gone to the same school. Aside from that, it was mostly normal, except about halfway through the tutorial, we discussed the lungs and respiration, inhalation, alveoli, etc. As I said, basic stuff. But I paused afterwards just to have a think about where to go next, and I heard the sound of them breathing. That's not abnormal, I know, but it seemed to fill the silence so suddenly and all at once. I could have sworn that I didn't actually hear it before that moment. Like they'd only just then started breathing. which is absurd, obviously. I was probably just listening out for it because we'd been discussing the lungs. Even so, it was disconcerting, and I don't mind telling you that I breathed quite a sigh of relief myself when the tutorial was over and I could get out of there. Now, I consider myself a conscientious worker, and in all my years at King's, I can count on one hand the number of times I've called in sick. But when the time came for the next tutorial with this class, I had to stay home with a migraine. It wasn't a lie, exactly. The thought of sitting there for another 2 hours with those staring, placid eyes gave me such a spell of anxiety that my brain felt like it was being stabbed with a shard of ice. I did have to teach them eventually, of course. I couldn't avoid it forever. Re-entering that room, though, all of them were sat in the exact same positions, in the exact same clothes. Their breathing deliberate and almost pointed. When Erika Musterman, or was it Jan Novak, said good morning, the others followed suit, one by one, and I had to fight the urge to run. It struck me then that, despite how diverse their names were, none of them seemed to have any noticeable accent. Not that it did anything to reassure me. There was no one else who could take the tutorials. Believe me, I did everything I could to try and find a replacement. Still, once I got used to their stares, their silence, and the fact that their questions were both specific and oddly basic, one of the Petrovs once asked me how sharp are the knees meant to be. Well, it was just about tolerable. I'm a bit ashamed to admit it, but I came to terms with the fact that I didn't care if they passed any exams. And that actually made the whole affair more manageable. I just did my best to stop caring. And then came our first of 2 sessions in the dissection room. We were looking at the skeleton. I had been dreading this. Given exactly how creepy and unsettling the students were just sat in a classroom, the idea of what they could do when given access to human remains made me feel quite nauseous. But I couldn't bring myself to leave them there alone, so I went. It was even worse than I'd feared. Seeing them stood there over the bits of cadaver, their faces, normally so neutral, were alive with... what was it I saw? Excitement? Curiosity? Hunger? Whatever it was, it didn't reach their eyes. Still staring and blank. I went through the procedures with them and tried my best to keep the trembling out of my voice. When Falan reached for a scalpel and started cutting into our samples, I felt faint. I was trying to keep an eye on everyone, but the dissection tables were arranged in a semicircle around the lab, and each time I turned to face one of the students, I began to hear this cracking sound from whichever tables I wasn't looking at. Like a snapping bone or a rib cage being forced open. I'd turn back and see nothing untoward. Just John or Erica or Juan or whoever it was looking at me quizzically over distinctly unbroken bones. But it kept happening. Whenever I wasn't looking, I heard the crunch and the crack of bone. I couldn't ask about it. I knew the dead-eyed, mute stare they'd give me if I did, and I just couldn't face that. Finally, I managed to position myself so that I could see what was happening behind me in the reflective edge of the metal table. It wasn't much, but I could see a slightly warped image. It was Pavel in this case. I saw him pick up a bone, a radius, I believe, from the forearm. He held it up next to his own arm, and then there came that snapping, crunching noise. I swear I saw his arm distend itself, the skin shifting as something inside changed and rearranged until it matched the length of bone he was holding up to it. I tried not to react, not to make a noise at this mad impossibility that I saw. I couldn't help it, though, and my legs gave out. I collapsed on the floor with a whimpering cry. None of them looked at me. None of them offered to help me up. None of them gave any reaction at all. I shut my eyes tight as that cracking sound began to come from every direction, as all 7 of them began to change themselves. It went on for almost half an hour until our allotted time in the lab ended. And then they left, walking past me, still sat helpless on the floor. As they did, each of them thanked me for the lesson, as though nothing had happened. And I swear that every single one of them was taller than when they started. I started taking more sick leave after that. I avoided their tutorials as often as possible, and when I did go, we largely just sat there in silence until one of them asked me a question about human anatomy, which I would reluctantly answer. I know I should have just abandoned them entirely. If they were going to complain to anyone, they would have done it already, but even then I was worried my colleagues might notice, and I really didn't want to get a reputation as some absentee tutor. It didn't help that a colleague of mine, Dr. Laura Gill, once expressed surprise on learning that I'd been absent the day before, as apparently she'd passed by my teaching room and my anatomy class had just been sat there, waiting quietly. The thought of them politely filing to every tutorial, just sat there blank and staring, whether I was there or not, just waiting. To be quite frank, I think that bothered me almost more than being sat there with them. Still, I managed largely to avoid them until the 21st of March, when they had their second lab dissection. Hearts. I'm not an idiot. I was well aware of the sort of sinister nonsense that was likely to happen if I went, but I also knew by now that they would attend whether or not I was there. And to leave them in a lab unsupervised would be the sort of thing that would actually get me fired from my position. It was a rainy morning. I remember that because I deliberately didn't put up an umbrella. Something inside me was so dreading what was going to happen that the very act of opening umbrella seemed pointless, as though my being dry couldn't stop what was coming. There was no reason not to get soaked. So I was dripping wet when I entered the lab, and my glasses had steamed up to the point where I could no longer see through them. When I wiped them clean, they revealed those 7 blank faces, utterly unconcerned with my sodden state. Each had somehow got the heart laid out in front of them on the dissection tray. I decided not to prolong it and waved them to start. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought they'd descend into some sort of feeding frenzy, but they didn't. They just began to dissect the hearts, as any other class would, occasionally asking me polite questions. I was so taken aback at how normal the whole situation seemed to be that it took me some time to actually answer them. I did, though, and the first hour of the class almost put me at least a little bit at ease. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Maybe they were doing weird things to their insides, but if it was the heart, then I couldn't see it and I couldn't hear it. And I'd long since decided with this class that if I couldn't see or hear it, I didn't care. Then Erica Musterman held up her heart and looked at me. I began to get that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach as she asked me, "How does the heart pump blood?" I started to explain the biological mechanisms of the heart pumping when she shook her head slowly and said, "What does it look like?" And then when I didn't answer, "Is it like this?" The heart in her hand began to spasm, not like the regular rhythmic pulse of a heartbeat, but like a balloon being rapidly squeezed at one end. Bits of it swelled and stretched and distorted, seemingly at random, and blood began to flow haphazardly from the ventricles, dripping down Erica's forearm and dribbling onto the floor. I stood there, speechless, staring at this horrible miracle, from when behind her I see Falan raise his heart, saying, "That's not what it's like." And blood starts to gush from all over his heart in tiny geysers, shooting in every direction. Soon each of them is holding a heart up, each pumping and throbbing differently, blood leaking, spurting out of them in a different way, a different nightmare. They wanted me to tell them which was right. I don't know how long I stared before I finally raised my hand to point at Jan Novak, who seemed to have the closest to an accurate impression of a regular human heartbeat. Then I turned and walked out of the lab. I spent the rest of the day sat in the staff room, waiting for someone to come running in, screaming about the lab being full of blood. I expected questions I couldn't answer, and immediate termination, but nothing happened. No one came. When I returned to the lab several hours later, there was no sign of any blood, except for the tiniest speck dried into a tile crack in the corner, unless that had been there before. I don't know. My shoes were still speckled with blood, though, so I know I wasn't hallucinating it. I checked with Dr. Gill, confirmed that she could see the spots, though I neglected to tell her it was blood. I had no intention of inviting further questions. I missed the next 3 tutorials. I just stayed at home, but something wouldn't let me just simply let it go. Finally, I made a decision. I wanted to see where they lived. I felt like I needed to, for some reason. Needed to see if they existed outside of my class, outside of my mind. I asked Elena, and irregular as it was, she gave me the address. It didn't surprise me to find out they all lived in the same place, a semi-detached house on Kingsland Road in Newham. I'm afraid I don't remember the number, and the details have disappeared from the college systems. The house itself was run down, as might have been expected, and I must have spent a good 15 minutes just stood in front of it, waiting for the courage to approach. Finally, I knocked on the door. The wood was old and dry, and some flaked off under my knuckles. It opened immediately, and there stood Jan Novak. When she saw me, her mouth twisted into something I think was meant to be a smile. "Hello," she said. "Have you come to give us more lessons? We would like to learn about the liver." Her eyes locked onto my abdomen. I was about to reply when a muffled scream of pain came from somewhere deep inside the house. It sounded ragged, like whoever was crying out had been gagged. I looked to Jan Novak, who showed no indication she had heard it, still staring at where I taught her my liver would be. I ran, and she watched me go without moving. I did call the police, but they just told me that the house was currently unoccupied and they'd found no evidence that there had been anyone present. I took great pains never to see that glass again. I avoided all tutorials and simply waited until the end of term. I haven't seen them since.
That's it?
Not quite. There was one other thing. When I went to the classroom shortly after what should have been their final tutorial, I found something on the desk. It was an apple. Next to it was a handwritten note that said, "Thank you for teaching us the insides." I burned the note, just in case.
And the apple? Did you eat it?
Do I look like an idiot? Of course not. I cut it in half first to check if it was off.
And?
Human teeth. Inside were human teeth arranged in a smile. Here, I brought you the two halves to see for yourselves.
Oh, good Lord, that's...
Deeply unpleasant, yes. You can keep it if you want, as a proof.
We do not want it. I'm afraid it isn't really proof. Someone could have stuck those teeth in after the apple had been cut.
You think I would do that?
I didn't say you would. I just said it was enough of a possibility that I don't think your tooth apple has a place in our artifact storage. Also, it is technically medical waste.
Fine. I'll dispose of it myself. Now, is there anything else you want with me?
No, this should do. We'll investigate and get back to you if we find anything. Statement ends. The first thing about this statement that makes me dubious is that it comes from a fellow academic. Historic and prestigious as the Magnus Institute is, there are still many within the sphere of higher education that do not grant it the respect it deserves. And some have been known to make false statements as ill-conceived jokes. Another mark against the veracity of the statement is the names of the students. A quick internet search reveals Erika Mustermann as the official German placeholder name, similar to the English name John Doe. The same is true of the other names. Juan Perez is the generic name of choice in most Spanish-speaking countries, Fulan al-Fulani in the Middle East, etc. It seems strange to me that Dr. Elliot would fail to take note of this. Still, Tim made contact with Elena Bauer in the King's Administration Office, and while she couldn't find any actual records of them in the system, she does remember them being there, and confirms that she assigned them to Dr. Elliot last year. She could be in on it, of course, but Tim seems to believe her. There's also the matter of the teeth. I stand by my assessment that there is no evidence they were placed there by supernatural means, but it does seem an awfully long way to go for a bad joke. In the end, we did send them off to a dental specialist, but they weren't able to tell us much beyond the fact that they all seemed like healthy adult teeth, and most of them appeared to come from different people. There's not much more we can do to follow this up, without dedicating additional time we can't afford. The only other lead was Sasha's discovery that early last year, Dr. Rashid Sadana took his own life. There's no direct connection, except that he taught the Anatomy, Physiology, and Pathology for Complementary Therapies course at St. Mary's University, and the only note found near the body simply read, "Not to be used for teaching." End recording.
That hearing that episode again after having finished the series, I think that deity or that god that is sort of overlooks like that kind of a fear, if I'm connecting it to the right one, was probably one of my favorites by the time that I finished the series. So I think that's really interesting. I remember listening to that episode the first time and thinking how strange it was that, like, I guess to me, like, they were, like, exchanging, like, parts with the anatomy models, but I think that's probably the third or fourth episode. Oh, there's our hour reminder. It is now 1 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, and it doesn't feel like we've been streaming for 3 hours, so we're gonna spend this last 10 or 15 minutes just allowing ourselves to slowly drift to the music. And as I have said in the beginning, we do have a goal here of viewers and dreamers being able to fall asleep. So I hope that you have enjoyed not just listening to reading tonight, but also to listening to the podcast and the stories. I hope that tomorrow you have a very cozy day no matter what you're doing. Make sure that you get a little bit of sun. Maybe take a mini cat nap outside. I surely will try to. And I will see you back here on Monday, my dears. Thank you so much for spending your time here with me. As we like to say, Oyasumi, or Oyasumira, or sweet dreams, and good night. Enjoy the music, and then we'll have our gentle ending and just go to our outsu scene. Let's fall asleep together in our pillow fort.